I made the prediction in 2023 that Persona 3 Reload would be the greatest Persona game ever made when it releases. I figured Atlas was taking the chance to clean up the rougher edges of the original, and I was right. Persona 3 Reload is a much smoother experience, one that matches up quite nicely to the experience found in the likes of Persona 4 and 5, and in some elements surpasses them. The presentation it's be- the presentation is better than it's ever been. The additions to the soundtrack are spectacular, and the added story content feels so similar to the original. I had a hard time distinguishing what was new and what wasn't more than a few times. However, the cleanliness of Reload feels somewhat at odds with the original's personality, something that sometimes bleeds into the entire experience as a whole. From a narrative standpoint, Persona 3 Reload is almost exactly the same as the original. Aside from the new English voice cast who all do a superb job, nothing about the narrative is at all different at its core. Which means, if you haven't played the original, I highly recommend picking this game up. The game has a strong grip on its themes and it bleeds into everything about the game, be it the soundtrack or even just the menu design. If you have played the original Persona 3, however, there isn't a whole lot here that is new besides the above changes. The male characters, while lacking social links, do have side quest chains that effectively act as social links, which is nice, but it doesn't feed into the same loop due to the lack of an arcana associated with them. A few new events related to the antagonists of the game were also added, but they slotted in so well, I honestly forgot which was which, you know, take that or leave that. It's up to you if that's a good thing or a bad thing. This is arguably the first Persona game that made me feel overwhelmed during my first playthrough. There are so many social links in this game that unless you are following a specific guide, it would be incredibly difficult to max them all out your first time through, which in some ways is good because it allows players to have a varying experience. It does run the risk, though, of veterans of the franchise feeling locked into a specific playstyle. Tartarus, the game's main dungeon, is another place where your mileage may vary. Almost 300 floors divided up into sections, and most of them follow the same format. While the visual design and layouts may change, the format remains largely the same throughout the dungeon. Run up a particular predetermined amount of floors, fight the boss, repeat until you reach the end of that section, and go home. Thankfully, the game doesn't require much in the way of grinding unless you go out of your way to get specific high-level personas, but the tedium of Tartarus isn't as alleviated by this remake as I would have liked. Speaking of personas, the system is just as satisfying here as it is in any game. The fusion system feels like a meaningful progression and distinguishes itself amazingly from its contemporaries in the monster collecting genre. However, I would have liked to see a version of the compendium fusion from Shin Megami Tensei 5 in this game, since it can be a hassle to go and summon personas trying to make the right combination. However, Atlas continues to make time spent in menus engaging and feel like a reward that grants you a new toy rather than mandatory busy work, something most JRPG developers can't seem to manage. And add on to this the new abilities the party can obtain, and the combat has never felt better. The music of Persona 3 has always been iconic, and while there are some missteps, specifically the new Mass Destruction feeling a bit muffled compared to the original, the new tracks are amazing, and the soundtrack still maintains that thematic through line that always gut punches me near the end of the game. I fear the biggest problem with Persona 3 Reload, unfortunately, is the context of its release. The story has been told so many times in so many different ways. Not only do you have the original, but also portable with a whole new female protagonist, the manga, and even the movies. I actually love the Persona 3 I actually love the Persona 3 movies and recommend them to anybody interested in the narrative of the game Due to the small additions to the narrative, specifically the characterization of the protagonist, something missing almost entirely from Reload. While Reload is inarguably the best version of this narrative in any of the games, the fact that I've consumed this story so many times before did hinder my experience. Overall, Persona 3 Reload is an excellent remake. While a bit too faithful to the original at times, specifically with regards to Tartarus and the core gameplay loop, I highly recommend it to anybody interested in the franchise. It actually works incredibly well as an introduction to Persona. Thanks so much. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and have a great rest of your day.